guys, Wisteria2909 back for another episode of Reading the Wrong Way. So, welcome back! We started the Alice in the Country of spinoffs and Hearts last month, and now it's time to tackle what's currently the longest of the countries, the Country of Clover. Now, to understand this, I have to explain a bit. In this wonderland, the world experiences moves, in which the land itself changes, with places and buildings being replaced with new ones. They still exist, but only have limited accessibility by a few people, two that I know of being the Cheshire Cat and Nightmare Gottschalk. In Clover, the amusement park and clock tower, along with its inhabitants, are replaced by the forest and the Tower of Clover. Many things change in Clover, including the characters, their roles, and their relationships. Each series briefly explains the move at the beginning, but it is explained most thoroughly I found in Cheshire Cat Waltz and Knight's Knowledge. We've got a lot to cover in this country, so let's get started. Like last time, all of the series I'm going to show you are rated OT for older teens, generally considered 16+, which I think is appropriate. If you'd like a complete breakdown of my rating explanation, please refer to my September video in the Country of Hearts. This series contains a total of 13 volumes so far, belonging to 6 separate series. There is still 1 volume of Knight's Knowledge to be released, along with single-volume titles March Hare's Revolution and Twin Lovers. Beyond that, there are 2 unconfirmed volumes also occurring in Clover, featuring Peter the White Rabbit and Grey Ringmark. Both of these series will have 3 volumes total to them if they're licensed for Western release. Let's start with one of the series' more complicated characters, Ace the Knight of Hart Castle, in his solo debut, Ace of Hearts. Ace, who has been fighting his role as the Knight of Hart Castle, finds himself even more lost without the clock tower and Julius. Everyone but Alice seems to know just how dangerous and deadly Ace is capable of being, and despite their warnings, she follows him anyways. They are both completely lost in Clover, and Alice is lost in her feelings for Ace. There are a few things to note about this book. First and foremost is the amount of Crimson Empire forced down your throat in this novel. Not only are there 2 fairly sizable short stories from the series, as well as another series preview at the end, but the characters of Crimson Empire actually introduce readers to the Alice universe at the very beginning. It's quite ridiculous how much they pushed the series in the earlier spin-offs. It isn't quite as predominant in the newer releases. This, however, affects the development of the relationship since there are less pages to work with. The dynamic between Alice and Ace is rushed, with little deep exploration into the Country of Clover, despite them being lost in it on several accounts. There's also a fair amount of interaction with Grey Ringmark, a new character in the Clover series. As far as characters are concerned, Ace is quite different from his original self. He's a little more similar to Blood Dupre in that you can't tell if his love is true love, due to him constantly involving Alice in dangerous situations. He's also really lost his air of danger around him, though. While he was a little goofy and childish in the original, he had a definite, mysterious, and dark side to him. A fair amount of the panels feature him laughing and making jokes, however. I didn't necessarily hate this spin-off, as I laughed at most of the jokes, but I don't think it truly represents his character. Okay, enough about that book. Let's move on. Let's stick with Ace and move on to his second series. Knight's Knowledge has 3 volumes to it, but the final volume won't be released until November. Therefore, this review is solely based on the first 2 volumes. Similar to the first, Alice and Ace are both lost in the Country of Clover. While adjusting to the move and the assemblies required of the role holders, Alice is lost in her feelings toward Ace. She has trouble telling if her feelings for him are actual love or simply pity. But she also knows Ace is dangerous and can easily kill her whenever he wishes. He seems to only love her when she appears distressed and helpless. Things become even more complicated when Elliot the March Hare realizes his own feelings of love for Alice and his newfound jealousy of Ace. I think of the 2 Ace series, this one represents him a little more fairly. He's still goofy, but he exhibits much more of his darker side in this series. I also like this particular series in that there's a lot of interaction from all of the supporting characters, instead of Alice interacting with only a handful of them. With 3 volumes, it seems as though their relationship is able to build up more slowly and deeply than it did in Ace of Hearts. We're going to shift our view from Hart Castle to the Hatter Mafia now to look at the Bloody Twins. This single-volume series features Tweedledee and Tweedledum, the childish twin gatekeepers of the Hatter Mansion. As Alice adjusts to the move and assembly, she finds it still just as dangerous as Hearts was. But she has the clingy, bloody twins to protect her. With their ability to turn their biological clocks in appearance from kids to adults, Alice starts questioning her feelings for both of them. Is it appropriate to have feelings for men who call her Big Sis and are brothers? Overall, this is a very cute story featuring Dee and Dum. It fairly represents their characters from the original and adds a twist of them having adult forms, making them a more acceptable love interest for Alice without making her look completely like a pedophile. I will admit I felt a little odd reading this since her love is for both of them at the same time, but I don't think that necessarily detracts from the story. I think that's more a matter of personal preference. At the end are short stories featuring Boris Hare and Blood Dupre, as well as some lesser-seen characters, Vivaldi, the Queen of Hearts, and Mary Gowland, leader of the amusement park. Keeping with the Hatters, we're going to rejoin Elliot in his single-volume story, March Hare. Alice has settled into her life as a maid at the Hatter Mansion. Though she stayed in Wonderland, she is determined not to fall in love with anyone. Elliot, the second in command, doesn't share her sentiment, openly expressing his affections for her. While Elliot is usually cheerful, affectionate, and obsessing over carrots, Alice knows that he has a darker, deadly side that he uses when working. Can she overcome her fears of his other side and her own personal feelings for a chance at true love? This book fairly represents Elliot with the balance of his carefree leisure side and his serious work side. For once, Blood Dupre doesn't come off as a complete jerk and creep to both Elliot and Alice, actually offering them good advice on more than one occasion. There's also quite a bit of direct confrontation from Peter White in this volume, making for an interesting battle of the bunnies. Now we're going to delve into a literal nightmare featuring the character Nightmare Gottschalk, the caterpillar, in his single-volume debut titled Nightmare. This is one of the most poorly rated of the Alice spin-offs, spanning all 3 countries, and with good reason. But first let me attempt to give you a brief summary before I start the inevitable rant. Alice is quite comfortable in the Country of Clover, but finds living with the lead role holder, Nightmare, to be quite difficult. With his weak constitution and non-existent work ethic, Alice finds it hard to believe that Nightmare is the same mysterious and smooth demon in her dreams. With Gray helping her, Alice looks for new medicine for him and different ways he can protect himself when outside of her dreams. Where do I even begin with this volume? The main complaint among readers has been the artwork. I believe I mentioned in the last video that each series is drawn by a different artist. They're usually so flawless and consistent that I have to actually look at the cover to know that a different artist drew it. I'll never have to do that with this volume. The artist's lines are thick and rough, fairly uncommon for a shoujo manga. They overuse deformed expressions in what I estimate is roughly 80% of the panels. Ace is by far the most changed in appearance. Aged between 23 and 26 in the original game, this illustrator's version of him has long unkept hair and large eyes, giving him the appearance of a teenager of roughly 15 years old. Most of the panel backgrounds look like sketches or are just left blank. It's worth noting that the same artist also illustrated the Nightmare trilogy in the Country of Joker, which we'll discuss next time, as well as the Lizard Aid, Gray Ringmark's debut novel. The story isn't much better to me. Nightmare was a character I was very much anticipating a series on because of how mysterious and smooth he was in the original and even in other spin-offs. He does have a childish and lazy side, but it always balanced nicely with his serious side. In the other spin-offs, no matter who the lead male was, Alice would struggle between staying in Wonderland or returning home to her sister, while attempting to reinforce how unworthy of love she is. There was no mention at all of her other life, nor her transition from Hearts to Clover in this book. This novel was more like fluff to me. There was no real romantic build-up like in the other spin-offs, and even talk of marriage within the first few colored pages of the book. This novel seems to be more of a running gag about Nightmare's lack of work ethic and weak constitution than a romance novel. The concept and twist, if one can call it that, is good in concept but was very poorly executed. There are 2 short stories featuring Peter and the Bloody Twins at the end, which are somewhat more pleasurable than the main story, and just like in Ace of Hearts, about a third of the book is taken up by Crimson Empire. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox and move along from this one now. Lastly, we have what is currently the longest of any of the Alice spin-offs, Cheshire Cat Waltz featuring Boris Hare, which is complete at 7 volumes. Alice has been forced to the Country of Clover and has become lost and lonely after suddenly losing the clock tower and the amusement park where she was living with Gowland and Boris. She gains some guidance when she discovers Boris has been forced to the Country of Clover as well. Confronted with doors that talk to her and memories she can't fully remember, Alice is more lost than ever. This attracts the attention of Ace, who loves Alice even more when her brain's betwixt. Boris, however, loves her and knows that he's the only one that can help her find her way, if he can convince her of his feelings and get her to admit her own. This book shows a real change in Boris from his original characterization, but I don't really think that's a bad thing. The careless, reckless stray cat from the original is now becoming a little more tame and serious as he tries to win Alice's heart. I think it's a nice change of character for him, such as a teenager growing into adulthood. Due to the longer format, their relationship is able to build much more slowly and deeply than in the other spin-offs. We also see quite a bit of interaction with the supporting cast, particularly Ace and Peter. So now that you have the summaries, what do you need to know about all of these series as a whole? Every series includes color pages at the beginning of them. These volumes also include a quick summary of what happened in the original series, as well as short bios of the characters that will appear in the story. If you've never read the original series or any of the Heart spin-offs, you can essentially pick these up thanks to these pages, but it's far more rewarding if you read the original first. Since this takes place in a new country, many of the volumes mention the move at the beginning if it takes place after the move has already occurred. Sometimes they are in-depth, other times it simply states, "Now I'm living in the Country of Clover." All of these books are published in the same size format, so they look very nice on shelves together. Once again, Elliot's book proves to be the best value in that there are no previews whatsoever at the end of it. While there are a few previews at the end of all the other volumes, the worst offenders are by far Ace of Hearts and Nightmare, with Crimson Empire short stories taking up a third of their total pages. This is something to consider when purchasing the volumes if you really want the most Alice story for your money, considering these books are above the average price of $9.99 at $13.99 per volume. If you're concerned about it and interested in buying one of the books, feel free to leave a comment down below, and I'll tell you how long the previews in that book are. I own every volume that's been released so far from Hearts, Clover, and the Joker series, so I can give you an actual page count. I'll be adding the Diamond series to my collection next week, so I can offer a page count on that as well. Moving right along. The artwork for all of the series is shoujo in style, with that one lovely exception I already ranted about. The lines are always clean and delicate, with all of the characters, including the males in my opinion, looking quite pretty as is expected of any shoujo manga. Nightmare is of course the only exception where the artist for whatever reason uses thick rough lines and overuses the deformed character technique. We'll unfortunately be seeing more of that artist next month. Yay! There are bonus comics at the end of each volume and one on the back cover drawn by the artist which usually don't relate to the events in the book and are very comedic in nature. Hare is an exception in that there are no comics at the end, but there are a few two-panel comics after each chapter. It's also worth noting that Bloody Twins, being one of the first published in the Country of Clover, has a nice fun facts section which gives readers a breakdown of how different characters were affected by the move to this new country. It's a handy reference with notes that carry over to all of the other spin-offs. So, that wraps up the Country of Clover. We conquered the longest country as far as currently released books. Again, if you have any questions about any of the volumes showcased here today, or about the series in general, leave a comment down below, and I'll try my best to answer it. I'll see you back here next month when we head over to two different countries, the Country of Joker and the brand new Country of Diamonds. See you next time!
When I was given freedom, oh, all I did was play. When I turned back, there was nothing to see. You closed your doors before I could open mine. Now I know, now I see, it was a